Hi everyone, I'm Walnut and welcome back to another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet VGC video. Today I'm going to go over my experience with the Global Challenge, share some battles and talk about some things I learned and where I might be going with the team. Team is up on screen, and if you want an overview, check out the video linked in the description below where I go over the team in more detail. Pokepaste and rental code are also available if you want to check those out too. I played about 30 battles total with about 20 on day 2 and 10 on day 3, and personally I had a lot of fun with the tournament. I like closed team sheet because of the opportunity to catch your opponent by surprise with uncommon sets, and the information gathering you have to go through, but don't get me wrong, I do think open team sheet is good for tournament play. Fortunately, I didn't run into any issues with the game like disconnecting on my side. In fact, in one of my games my last up got knocked out and they disconnected and I received points, which is pretty lucky I guess. Never really thought of that as a win con, so I guess you should really never give up. I feel like I faced a lot of different teams. Obviously I saw a lot of like Amoonguss and Flutter Mane and stuff like that, but it wasn't the exact same 6 every time. I set a goal and I'd say I reached it. I wanted to hit top 1000, and on day 2 I ended at over 1700 points, which is farther than I expected to go. I think it was about top 300 when I checked near the end of day 3, but I did just end up playing on day 3 near the tail end of the tournament to face the sweatiest of opponents since I don't really care about standing. I apparently didn't have a play count set up, so I don't think I could have received points anyways, but after some tough matches on day 3, I ended around 1640. Unfortunately, I forgot to record a few games, and those happened to be some of the best games I played into what I think are my hardest matchups, so all I have are notes. But it's okay, I'll show what kind of happened during those battles in this format. I could have done this in Showdown or something, but this seemed funner. The rest of the battles will be the usual card battles, but let's start off with these. In this first one, basically, my opponent had Gholdengo, which I can only hit super effectively with Shadow Ball, Sucker Punch, and Phantom Force. But Sucker Punch and Phantom Force are a bit unreliable, and it kinda resists like everything else I could throw at it. They also had Amoonguss on the team, so in team preview, I was like, if they have Amoonguss next to Gholdengo, I think I just lose, cause they'll just redirect my Shadow Ball and I don't have a way to hit it. And my opponent led exactly that, so I switched to my AV Scizor on turn 1, hoping I could take a hit and maybe U-turn the Flutter Mane back in, and then I taunted the Amoonguss with my Gyarados, and they went for a Rage Powder and a Nasty Plant on turn 1 as I get the taunt onto the Amoonguss. Turn 2, I know the Amoonguss can't protect, so I U-turned that solid Scizor and tried to get Waterfall Chip into Gholdengo, but they ended up switching to Iron Hands and protecting the Gholdengo, but I was able to bring my Flutter Mane back in, so I was in a position to attack the Gholdengo without the Amoonguss on the field. They do have Fake Out, but that doesn't work on Flutter Mane unless I go for a Terra, and that's exactly what I'm going to do, because I predicted my opponent might go for a Terra, and Water Terra has been really popular recently, so I was banking on that as I go for a Helping Hand, Terra Fairy, Choice Specs Dazzling Gleam, and they Terra. So I'm able to delete the Iron Hands, Gholdengo survives on a sliver of HP, and is able to get the KO on my Flutter Mane with Make It Rain, but Gyarados eats it up. They then brought in Amoonguss as I brought in Scizor. I feinted the Gholdengo as Amoonguss tried to Rage Powder, but Feint has the same priority and I outspeed, so I pick up the KO and then I taunted Amoonguss again. They then sent in Chien Pao as their last Pokemon, but with a taunted Amoonguss and a Chien Pao, I just went for a Feint and Thunder Wave to break Sash and set it up for my Chien Pao in the back, and the game was basically sealed up. In this other match, they led Gholdengo again next to Grimmsnarl, and I once again just went for a Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam into the Gholdengo as they go for a Terra Water. I forgot exactly what happened in the middle, but my endgame was a 1 HP Scizor and a healthy Gyarados versus like a 15 to 20% Gholdengo. I think they had Reflect Up, or maybe it had gone down by then, and it was revealed that they were a Protect Nasty Plot set with lefties. I wasn't doing enough damage with Gyarados to knock out Gholdengo past the Leftovers healing, and Scizor couldn't attack with Close Combat or U-turn since I would just get outsped and KO'd. But I expected them to go for a Protect for Leftovers recovery, so I went for a Feint and a Waterfall, and it worked. It allowed me to bring them down low enough that another Feint and Waterfall was enough to pick up the KO, but without the Feint, I think the Scizor would have just gotten KO'd by Shadow Ball, and Gyarados doesn't do enough damage on its own to outlast the Leftovers recovery if they alternate protects, so Feint came in super clutch that battle. I just really wish I had those recorded, but I'll be more careful from now on. Gholdengo is generally one of the harder matchups for this team if they don't Terra, so I guess I learned that to win the matchup I need to force the Terra from them, or to get Amoonguss out of the picture when I position my Flutter Mane in. But now, let's go back to our usual card battles. So my first opponent is running Maushold Annihilape, Grimmsnarl, Amoonguss, Tinglu, and Flutter Mane. So Mouse Ape is definitely one of the scarier closed team archetypes since there's a lot of different sets you can run, and depending on the Terra they can get set up and be a little bit hard to stop. But I have thought about the matchup a little bit, and I think my lead into this should be the Flutter Mane and Amoonguss. I'm pretty sure a Terra Fairy Specs Moonblast will just delete Mouse Hold before they can set up Rage Fist stacks. And I do expect this to be the Rage Fist beat up set since they do have Grimmsnarl for screens and Tinglu as another way to reduce damage to Annihilate. I'll also be bringing Chien Pao and Dragapult to this battle. I knew I wanted Chien Pao for ice damage into Amoonguss and Tinglu, and he can also threaten the Flutter Mane with damage, and I do have that Focus Sash for insurance. And it was between Dragapult and Scizor for the last slot. I didn't want to bring Gyarados to this one and proc the Defiant since I expect the Annihilate to show up to this matchup, though it would have been nice to have Gyarados versus Tinglu and Amoonguss, but Scizor just wouldn't be the best into Annihilate since I'm a little bit slower, and I don't really deal too much damage, especially depending on the Terra, so I thought Dragapult would be better. I could potentially Phantom Force to dodge a Rage Fist, and I don't really have to worry about like a Mouse Hold redirecting the Phantom Force, since I expect my Flutter Mane to eliminate that Mouse Hold early. My opponent's going to be leaving the Grimmsnarl and Annihilate. I was a little bit surprised to see this in the lead, but my plan here is to just go for a Moonblast into the Grimmsnarl and then Spore the Annihilate. Usually Mouse Hold holds the safety goggles, so the Annihilate can't really move too freely here, but maybe they have Vital Spirit. But since they don't have any stacks yet, my Flutter Mane should survive a Rage Fist if I go for the Terra Fairy, but I probably should have switched the Amoonguss this turn because I failed to realize if they set up a Light Screen with the Grimmsnarl, then the Mouse Hold might be able to survive Moonblast, so I probably should have brought in Dragapult or Chien Pao on the Amoonguss slot and be able to get my fast attacker in, because I would expect the Annihilate to just go for a Protect or a Terra and Bulk Up, but I think the second option is less likely when in front of an Amoonguss. We're going to get our Terra Fairy off. This is going to help us defensively versus the Rage Fist, and they do go for the Protect this turn. And they just go for a Taunt into Amoonguss, so luckily they don't set up the Light Screen, but our Amoonguss won't be able to Spore the Annihilate the following turn. But yeah, this Moonblast will easily delete the Grimmsnarl. No need for the Terra for damage, but it was nice just in case they did go for a Rage Fist or something like that. Of course, we're not going to be able to Spore the Annihilate because of the Taunt and the Protect anyways. And my opponent's going to be sending in Mouse Hold on the Grimmsnarl slot, but since I didn't get the Light Screen up, I think my plan is still fine here, so I'm just going to go for a Moonblast into the Mouse Hold. And I switched out the Amoonguss here because I wanted to reset the Taunt, and I brought in Dragapult in since I didn't want to weaken my own Flutter Mane's defense. But a Taunted Amoonguss actually isn't too bad here, since I don't expect the unboosted Rage Fist to do too much damage to my Flutter Mane, so Pollen Puff should be able to keep me quite healthy. I would expect an unboosted Rage Fist to do about half after my Terra, and if they set up bulk ups I can just clear smog them later anyways. But instead I am going to switch out the Amoonguss for Dragapult here. And my opponent's going to go for a Terra. I'm expecting this to be on the Annihilate because I'll probably try to set up the beat ups here. And in case I Moonblast the Annihilate, you don't want to just go down just to that. And it's going to be a Terra Water from their side, so at least it's not Terra Fire, so they won't resist my Fairy move if I choose to attack into that slot. Our Choice Specs Terra Fairy Moonblast is enough to delete the Mouse Hold, so no beat-ups for you. Of course they will be able to Rage Fist, and it does a lot more than I expected, about 80%, but it did get a crit, so without that crit, it probably would have done slightly over half, so keeping the Amoonguss in and just going for side Pollen Puffs would have been pretty good here, honestly. They're going to bring Flutter Mane in on the Mouse Hold slot, and it's a Booster Energy Special Attack, which I kind of love facing because that means you are not as fast as me. I thought about Moonblasting the Annihilate, but I didn't think I needed to. I was scared of stacking the Rage Fist, but if they went for a bulk up or something, a +1 Rage Fist wouldn't be enough to KO my Amoonguss, unless I procced a Defiant, so maybe this is the right play. If I did get an attack off, I'd probably do over 70% though, and then maybe I can just Sacred Sword to finish it off. But instead I'm just going to go for the Moonblast into the Flutter Mane and then also Phantom Force it. Either way, that Pokemon is fainting next turn to the Phantom Force, so this damage is a little bit wasted. They finish me off with a Dazzling Gleam, which is pretty smart on their end, because that means they'll also be able to get a bulk up with the Annihilate here. But now I'm just going to bring in the Amoonguss. Phantom Force is going to land, they can't really protect this turn, and a +1 unboosted Rage Fist is not doing that much damage to Amoonguss, and once it's asleep, I should be fine to just finish it off by itself. If they Rage Fist my Dragapult after it comes out of the Phantom Force, I think I'll be fine since I can just bring in Chien Pao, and then I can start Sacred Swording the Sleeping Annihilate, and also Rage Powdering away any of the attacks it tries to go for. Phantom Force will hit the Flutter Mane here and finish it off. So my opponent goes for another bulk up here. I'm not sure why they went for that. Maybe they thought they could survive through the sleep turns and then potentially start picking up KOs. But I have Clear Smog and they don't know that. But you know, I'll take it. They put the Annihilate to sleep here, but they do have the defense boost and Dragapult can't really hit past those, so I'm just going to substitute and Clear Smog this turn. It seems very safe, and I can sit behind cover while I remove their boost, and I can just attack next turn when it doesn't have them. So bye-bye +2. I would honestly expect them to forfeit this next turn since they don't really have much going for them now. And here, I'm just going to go for a side puff with the Amoonguss and then Dragon Darts the Annihilate. I didn't really think I would need to attack with Amoonguss since it's not dealing too much damage, and I thought just keeping the Dragapult healthy would be fine, though it doesn't really matter since one attack is probably going to KO the Dragapult anyways. This is a bit extra of me, but these Dragon Darts are doing a lot more damage than I expected, so next turn I'm just going to go for another Dragon Darts, and that should just seal up the game. So the Specs Flutter Mane went pretty insane this battle. I'm really happy with it honestly, and I don't know if I'll switch it to a different set. I could have been a little bit safer in the lead. I think that in almost every case the Annihilate is going to protect that slot, but Amoonguss switching just covers for the light screen, and I don't really care if Dragapult gets taunted. I think after the Amoonguss got taunted though, I probably should have just kept it on the field knowing that I will KO the Mousehold and Rage Fist won't KO me back. If I just targeted the Annihilate with my final Moonblast, that probably would have been fine since a Sacred Sword from Chien Pao most likely picks it up anyways, so I don't have to worry about the +2 boost. So I accidentally dragged out the battle trying to play it safe, but we're still able to secure the dub in the end. So my next opponent is using Flutter Mane, Amoonguss, Arcanine, Palafin, Tinglu, and Dragonite. So it's a pretty standard balanced team with that Fap core. I have a general idea of what moves and items are going to be on their Pokemon, and I think Dragapult's going to be okay here, especially if they leave that Palafin. That gives me an opportunity to sub up as they switch out. Gyarados is also nice in the lead. I have Taunt for Amoonguss, Intimidate into their physical attackers. Dragapult is a little bit scared of Tinglu, so Gyarados helps with that. Gyarados does take a little bit of time to deal with Flutter Mane, and you know, Dragapult can take care of that, so they kind of support each other. In the back, I'm going to be bringing Amoonguss and Chien Pao. Amoonguss redirection could be good here, especially against that Palafin. Spore is nice and into like Tinglu since it's usually Assault Vest, and I can also just use it as a switch in because it's really fat. Chien Pao lets me get extra damage with its ability. It's good into most of their mons, except it hates going against that Arcanine since Intimidate's annoying. The fire typing is hard to hit with Ice Spinner, and Will-O-Wisp just cripples Chien Pao. But I do like that Focus Sash for survivability, and I also want to try not bringing Flutter Mane to every battle because I feel like I honestly do that. So my opponent's going to be leading the Flutter Mane and the Mungus into my Dragapult and Gyarados. This first turn, I'm just going to try to get a sub up in case they go for a Protect or something. The Flutter Mane might be scared of me because I could go for a Phantom Force the next turn or just a Terra Steel Terra Blast this turn. And with the Gyarados slot, I'm going to go for a Taunt so that Mungus can't go for Spores or Rage Powders. I also don't want to go for attacks right away. In case I go for like a Phantom Force and they're able to protect this turn and then Rage Powder the next turn, that'd be pretty annoying. I also don't want to go for a Terra Blast right away in case they go for a Rage Powder once again, but a Terra Blast right away is probably better in this scenario since I at least get a Terra Blast off, and the Terra Steel is going to help me defensively versus this Flutter Mane unless they go for like a fat Shadow Ball. They are going to go for the Rage Powder with the Amoonguss, which is nice, so we're going to be able to taunt that. The Flutter Mane goes for a Dazzling Gleam here. I honestly thought it would not break my sub because of the Steel Terra, but it still breaks it. I don't know what I was expecting there. But we do get the taunt off here and only lose a little bit of HP on each of our Mons for our trouble. So this turn, I'm predicting the Amoonguss to switch into Arcanine, so I'm actually going to go for a Waterfall into that slot. And from previous games, I know that a -1 Waterfall does almost 50% to Arcanine, which is pretty good chip. And then I went for a Terra Blast into the Flutter Mane now, since the Amoonguss can't Rage Powder it away. If last turn I'd gone for a Phantom Force, I would have been in a good spot this turn and could have just doubled the Flutter Mane. But it is a little bit risky if they had protected the Amoonguss last turn and went for a Rage Powder this turn. And they are going to be switching the Amoonguss here. And it is in fact the Arcanine switching in, so it's going to have to eat a Waterfall from my Gyarados. Of course it is going to drop my attack with the Intimidate, but like I said, it should do almost 50%. They don't do anything with the Flutter Mane though, so unless it's sashed, it's going down to this Terra Steel Terra Blast. And yep, there it goes. There's the Waterfall into the Arcanine. This one also did about 50%, so maybe they're the same spread. I haven't looked too much into Arcanine spreads, to be honest, so I don't know how most of them are going to be trained. And my opponent's going to send the Amoonguss back in. So this turn I'm just going to go for another sub-taunt. I think they could go for a Will-O-Wisp into Gyarados or Flare Blitz the Dragapult, but if they Will-O-Wisp the Gyarados, I'm going to get my sub up for free. I just want to make sure to taunt the Amoonguss so I can't start disrupting my team too much with Spores and Rage Powder. But my opponent does decide to go for a Flare Blitz into my Dragapult. It's going to destroy this fresh sub I just set up, but the Arcanine is going to take recoil from this. And lastly, the Gyarados is going to taunt the Amoonguss. Going to shut it down for the most part. They could go for side Pollen Puffs, but I'm not going to worry about that. It would have been okay if they went for one last turn though, that would have been nice. But this turn, since the Arcanine took the Flare Blitz recoil, it's actually in range of another Waterfall, so unless they go for a Wisp into my Gyarados, they're not going to be able to survive that. But they could of course go for a Terra, but a Helping Hand's Dragon Darts should pick up the KO on their Arcanine, so I'm just going to do exactly that. The Amoonguss can't really do too much. And my opponent is going to go for a Terra this turn. And it's going to be a Terra Grass Arcanine. I'm going to assume that they're trying to avoid the Waterfall KO here while my Dragapult maybe tries to go for another sub. or attack the Amoonguss. But this Helping Hand Dragon Darts is enough to pick up the Arcanine. So a little bit of a waste of Terra on their side, which is unfortunate for them. And it also does solid damage into the Amoonguss. Looks like they tried to go for the side Pollen Puff this turn, but unfortunately does not go off when you don't have an ally. Of course, if they did go for it offensively, that would also do like no damage into my Terra Steel, Dragapult, and Gyarados. And my opponent's last Pokemon is going to be this Ting-Lu. But versus these last two Pokemon, I'm really not worried. I have Chien Pao and Amoonguss in the back. Their Amoonguss is probably just going to go for side Pollen Puffs into Ting-Lu, so I'm going to double that slot. I'm going to go for a Phantom Force into it, and then with the Gyarados, I can't Thunder Wave the Ting-Lu. The Amoonguss is going to faint soon anyway, so Thunder Wave into that slot isn't too worth it, and Helping Hand doesn't work on the first turn of Phantom Force, so I just went for a Waterfall into Amoonguss. But the Waterfall damage is really insignificant here because I am at -1 and it is resisted. But since I am expecting a Pollen Puff into the Ting-Lu, I don't think there's any point in attacking that slot either. So we're gonna get this Phantom Force off, disappear from the field. Waterfall does something to Amoonguss. Good chip. Ting-Lu tries to Stomping Tantrum or Dragapult, but this Phantom Force lets us dodge it. They did go for the side Pollen Puff though, so a Waterfall into the Ting-Lu would have been completely wasted that turn, so technically the Waterfall into Amoonguss is optimal, but I'm just gonna Helping Hand the Dragapult here, and it doesn't really matter if the Waterfall hit the previous turn, because with this Helping Hand boost, Phantom Force is going to pick up the Amoonguss, and then with Gyarados, Chien Pao, and Amoonguss in the back, I should be able to handle Ting-Lu, especially since they can't Terra, so I'll be able to get the Spore off. Of course, I did take some time to just Google search to make sure that I can Helping Hand a Phantom Force to Dragapult, because it's not on the field, so what am I clapping for? Luckily, it does boost the Phantom Force damage, and we're able to pick up the Amoonguss here. We do take some more Life Orb chip, but the Stomping Tantrum was going to KO us anyways. But now I can just bring in Amoonguss. So yeah, now I'm just going to go for Spores and Waterfalls. I'm not going to go for like a Taunt or anything because I do expect an AV on them. And once it's asleep, I can maybe bring in Chien Pao and take it out, and that's basically going to be the game. Luckily, this Waterfall does flinch, so there's no chance of a Fissure hitting my Amoonguss and getting the KO. So this Spore is going to sleep the Ting-Lu and the battle's going to be over. This battle, the substitutes didn't get to stay on the field, but they were useful in buying me time to taunt the Amoonguss. The Gyarados did great in doing that, but it did feel awkward at times, like the turn I Phantom Forced the Amoonguss. The Gyarados was basically just waiting for Dragapult, but Helping Hand was great this battle, and useful in many others. I think my opponent could have played a little bit better, like a Ting-Lu switch for Flutter Mane on turn 2 would have been good, but they probably were scared of my substitute going up, and they could have also Pollen Puffed the Arcanine with Amoonguss when they Flare Blitzed, and maybe switch to Ting-Lu after getting taunted, but GG's to my opponent. Our last battle is going to be against a Roaring Moon, Gholdengo, Flutter Mane, Arcanine, Maushold, and Wo-Chien. So Roaring Moon is a little bit rarer in Regulation C, so I'm kinda glad to see it. Maushold with Gholdengo is a little bit troublesome because of the redirection, so I'm going to lead Scizor. If I see the Maushold, I can go for close combat, and if I don't see Maushold, then I can U-turn into Flutter Mane. Gyarados will be next to it. Gyarados can take a hit and intimidate their physical attackers, and it's just generally good into their team. Chien Pao might need to come to help me take care of the Wo-Chien. It's good into most of their team as well, but Dragapult will struggle versus like Wo-Chien, and Amoonguss is going to struggle versus a lot of their team, like I can't do anything against Gholdengo. The Arcanine is threatening me, the Mouse Hold is probably safety goggles, Roaring Moon could Terra and just destroy me, and just the list goes on for Amoonguss. So yeah, Chien Pao is going to be my last slot. I don't know what Roaring Moons are going to be going in Regulation C though, because if they're going Booster Energy, it could be attack or speed depending on what it is. It could be a little bit threatening to me. If it is at speed, it's going to outspeed my Flutter Mane, which will be annoying. But if it's attack, it's going to do so much damage. My opponent's going to be leading the Arcanine and Gholdengo, so I don't see Mouse Hold, which is great for me. We're going to be taking Intimidates on both these Mons, but I'm just going to be U-turning out with my Scizor. But I will also go for a Terra Water here so I don't drop to a Flare Blitz or anything like that, and then with the Gyarados slot, I'm just going to be waterfalling the Arcanine for some good chip. But my opponent's going to be switching out the Arcanine. And they're going to be bringing in the Mouse Hold, so it looks like my plan for Scizor to take out the Mouse Hold is gonna be a little bit messed up here, because the Mouse Hold is coming in as my Scizor is going out, and this Terra Water isn't helping me all that much. Their Gholdengo's gonna set up a nasty plot too, which is very scary. And this waterfall is not doing that much damage at all, even at -1. This U-turn is going to bring it down to half. But they do have a Citrus Berry on their Mouse Hold, so maybe it's going to be safety goggles on the Arcanine. But we're going to be dipping out of this situation with the Scizor. And between Flutter Mane and Chien Pao, I thought I would just bring in the Flutter Mane first, since they could Terra Ghost if I try to bring in Chien Pao and go for a Sacred Sword. And then from then on, I don't know if I can break the Mouse Hold with Chien Pao and Gyarados out on the field. Maybe I could have brought in Chien Pao to go for like a Helping Hand Ice Spinner or something, but instead I just brought in Flutter Mane here. Moonblast probably KOs the Mouse Hold even if I don't Terra. And then I'm going to switch out the Gyarados for Scizor, but maybe I should have just switched in the Scizor for Flutter Mane and try to close combat the Mouse Hold again. But I did want to remove the Mouse Hold so Shadow Ball or Sucker Punches could start hitting the Gholdengo. So we're going to swap out the Gyarados here. Bring in our trusty Scizor. And my opponent does go for a Follow Me, so if I went for a Shadow Ball that turn, I'd be doing 0 damage. Luckily the Moonblast is enough to pick up the Mouse Hold. And the Gholdengo goes for a Shadow Ball, but it's aimed at the Gyarados slot, so maybe they expected to protect from my Flutter Mane. But they should know by now that I am Specs based off the damage, probably. But I did lock into Moonblast, so now that the Mouse Hold is gone, I can't really hit the Gholdengo anyways. They're going to be sending in the Roaring Moon next. And this Roaring Moon does have that booster energy, and it is booster speed, so it's a little bit scary. They could go for like a Terra and then attack the Flutter Mane either with like an Acrobatics or just even like a Terra Fire, Terra Blast. So I'm going to switch to Gyarados here to eat an attack and intimidate their Roaring Moon. Scizor's going to try to U-turn into the Roaring Moon so I can bring in the Flutter Mane again, and hopefully Flutter Mane can take a hit from a -1 Roaring Moon, and then I can start attacking the Gholdengo with Flutter Mane. And they are going to go for a Terra on their Roaring Moon, as I expected. And it's going to be Terra Flying. So not Terra Fire. Terra Flying is pretty common though, so within expectation. But they're going to be setting up a Tailwind this turn, which is just sinister. Tailwind Roaring Moon is something I ran in Series 2, and it was pretty fun. I also ran it alongside Gholdengo, and they're going to go for a Make It Rain here. So that Gholdengo was always going to KO my Flutter Mane if it was out anyways. I think to beat this Roaring Moon, I needed to taunt the Mouse Hold with Gyarados, and then use Scizor to bring in the Flutter Mane, and then if the Mouse Hold switches out, I need a Thunder Wave or taunt that slot, so the Roaring Moon won't be able to go for a fast Tailwind. Now I'm going to bring in the Chien Pao. I can threaten with the Sucker Punch, and I can also go for an Ice Spinner into the Roaring Moon. This turn, I think my opponent's going to be scared of the Sucker Punch, so I'm going to protect the Chien Pao so I don't get hit by the Roaring Moon, and Gyarados isn't going to be doing too much, but if I parry the Roaring Moon, it might be useful for when it's out of Tailwind. And they're going to go for a Breaking Swipe, would have broke my Focus Sash on Chien Pao and reduced my damage. Luckily, because we protect, we preserve our Sash. Of course, it is going to drop Gyarados' attack even further, but we're not attacking this turn, just going for a Thunder Wave, and luckily it lands. Of course, with the booster energy speed and the Tailwind, it's still going to outspeed my Chien Pao. And this turn, I was expecting my opponent to switch out into like Arcanine, but I was predicting it on the Gholdengo slot so they could avoid a Sucker Punch. So I was trying to sneak a KO onto the Roaring Moon here with a Helping Hand Ice Spinner. I expect to be taking an Intimidate and a Breaking Swipe attack drop on the Chien Pao, but I think this is my best shot at KOing the Roaring Moon. The Helping Hand will kind of offset at least one of those drops, but I am still going to be doing some reduced damage, but Roaring Moon doesn't have the best defense, so this might pick up the KO on it. And they do go for a switch, but it's on the Roaring Moon slot, not the Gholdengo. So Arcanine is going to come in, and Ice Spinner is headed towards that slot. So here's the Helping Hand. Of course, Make It Rain is going to go off first because Gholdengo is in the Tailwind, and it's going to drop me down to my Focus Sash. And then Chien Pao is going to go for an Ice Spinner, but into the Arcanine, that's not going to deal very much damage, so it was a great read from my opponent if they expected that. Maybe I should have just suckered the Gholdengo because they do have a boost, so maybe they wanted to stay in to preserve that, but I think even a Helping Hand Sucker Punch wouldn't even KO if they had bulk. So this turn, I'm a little bit screwed. They have extreme speed, and they can just pin my Chien Pao slot with that, so I have to protect. And then I guess with Gyarados, I have to try to stop the Arcanine. But I did also forget that Flutter Mane is another way I can avoid E-Speed, so I could have just switched to Flutter Mane on the Chien Pao slot maybe if I didn't expect them to go for a Make It Rain. Gyarados is likely to go down this turn, but with Chien Pao and Flutter Mane, I might be able to clutch this out, but I might need a para on the Roaring Moon and a crit Sucker Punch. But instead we're just going to protect and stay in. Extreme Speed was in fact aimed at my Chien Pao slot, so they do have it. If they happen to have Snarl or something like that, I'd be in a pretty good position as well. But they do choose to go for a Shadow Ball into the Gyarados, so a Flutter Mane switch would have been okay this turn, I guess. That way I'd at least be able to preserve all my Mons while the Tailwind expires. So we're going to send the Flutter Mane back in. But with both my opponents on the field, I don't really see myself winning this. I think I need to go for a double protect, then maybe just KO the Arcanine, and hope that the Gholdengo doesn't attack, and maybe I can go for a Sucker Punch crit into that slot. But we don't get the double protect, so the battle's basically over here. I think my opponent did a good job positioning their Mons, like that turn 1 switch on the Arcanine was kind of unexpected for me, but it did really well for them. I think I had a chance this battle when I removed the Mouse Hold with Flutter Mane alive, but the booster speed Roaring Moon gave me trouble, especially with the Gholdengo alongside it. Maybe I should have just Sucker Punched that one slot, but it was a hard call to make. Additionally, they could have just went for a Nasty Plot or something and been completely safe to that unless I had Throat Chop. Something like Ting Lu could help me patch up my Gholdengo matchup and help me into special attackers. maybe in place of Scizor since Scizor's holding an Assault Vest, but I'll go over that more in just a second. So something I want to work on more in battling is going to be positioning, like sometimes getting a KO on a Pokemon might be bad, or I might need to consider more factors regarding switching. I also want to work on predicting items and attacks my opponents might use. For example, last battle I initially thought Mousehold would hold safety goggles, since I'm used to that when it's next to Annihilate, but when paired with Goldengo you don't really need safety goggles since Goldengo's immune to spores anyways, so Citrus Berry there might make more sense for additional bulk. Regarding the team, I think Ting Lu could be interesting in Scizor slot. Ting Lu is good into Flutter Mane with Heavy Slam and has a ton of special defense. It also lets me have ground moves, which can help me versus Goldengo. I also have a nickname for Ting Lu. I know Ting Lu looks more like a moose than a reindeer, but I saw a Chopper TikTok edit and Monster Point kinda reminded me of Ting Lu, so maybe Chopper the Ting Lu might be joining the team in a future video. As of writing the script, I tried out Ting Lu on Showdown and I hit 2 out of 2 fissures, so maybe this is a sign. The Ting Lu set I'm thinking of is pretty offensive. It has enough attack investment to KO super bulky Flutter Mane with Heavy Slam, but I also might run Rock Slide over Ruination since I have so much attack investment. I think I could also experiment with using Sub Protect Flutter Mane. At EUIC, Jimmy Boyd used it with support Gyarados and it just looked amazing. Using Hex on paralyzed opponents did so much damage, and the Paraflinch combination with Substitute looked great. So I might look to try that out more in the future. Speaking of Gyarados, I'm going to be making the switch to Lumberry. Leftovers healing was nice in some situations, but burns basically offset the healing and also half my attack, and sleep would cost me more than just a few turns of leftover healing, and having the ability to switch into Spore is also nice, so I don't have to lead Gyarados versus Amoonguss. But for now, I'll keep using Scizor on the team, at least for the next Global Challenge, just because I like something weird like Feint Scizor for that kind of tournament. For future teams, I think the Ting Lu team would be a bit more consistent, so I might try that out. I also want to try a Mousehold team, but not a support set, but a Population Bomb one. I think I'll bring that to the 3rd Global Challenge just to catch some people off guard. But that's going to be all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Drop a like and a sub to the channel if you want more of my VGC journey, and until next time, bye bye.